This is the second lesson. Last time we made a primary button. Today let's make a secondary button. So this is the code from the last lesson. So let's write a comment here. Let's just say primary button. Now let's make a secondary button. So in Tailwind CSS, there's a way that we can abstract, for instance, the classes that describe a primary button into a class, so that, for instance, we can abstract all of this as the combination of classes that we can use to describe a button primary class, for instance. So let's make let's search for, let's go to the docs. Okay, place it again. Okay, so I want us to create a style tag. Here we're able to define custom classes. So we want a btn primary class, and okay, let me see if I can get those classes back. So we want btn primary to represent all of these classes. So let me copy this and go back to where we were. All right, so apply this. So at apply is a Tailwind directive that basically converts all of this into the appropriate CSS attributes here. So let's run this and see. Yeah, and it still works. Let's inspect our code and see what's in the background. So you see we have a new class called btn primary, and if you look at the definition of button primary, you can see there that these classes that we defined, they've been applied there. So you have the border radius equals to this, which is this one, and then you have the background color equals to this, which is this one, and then you have the text white, which is color this. So if you're familiar with CSS, what you notice is that Tailwind CSS just helps you abstract the CSS classes that you would normally have to sit down and write and repeat. So I look at Tailwind CSS like high level CSS. Alright, so let's define our next class. We want to create a secondary button. So let's just copy this guy. I'm not serious. Mind your business. Okay. So btn secondary. So if you observe button secondary, let's just copy this. Alright, so if you observe button secondary, the background color is different, the text color is different, but everything else is more or less the same thing. So let's just change some things here. So let's change let's change text white to text indigo 600. And I hope you've had time to just skim through the Tailwind website and see the available classes. If you're familiar with the classes, you would understand some of these changes that I make, and really it's easy to memorize once you've been using it for a number of projects. So we want the background color to, let's say we want indigo, but we want a lighter shade of indigo, and I'm going to go ahead to add a small shadow to our buttons, because if you look closely, there's this very subtle shadow effect. So let's see what we have. All right, and so we have cool looking buttons. So let's add a over effect, so that when we put our mouse over the button, it gives us some feedback that lets us know that we're about to click a button. So let's change the background color of the button primary. Let's make it a little bit darker when the mouse is over the button, to indicate to the user that you're about to click a button. So if you're familiar with CSS, you would know some class modifiers, something like btn primary, hover, and then you define whatever classes you want. So for instance, let's say we want the background color to be a little bit darker when we hover over this button. So if you check it out now, we have that effect. But Tailwind has more directives, or that lets us do these things in a simpler way. So let me show you something here in Tailwind that lets us easily write classes for modifiers such as hover. Oh my bad. Let's search for let's just say hover. All right. So here, this place talks about how you can do things like this, where if you see, we define a background color, and then we define a darker shade of that background color when you hover over the button. So you can go over this page to learn more about this. There are more modifiers, and then you can also take the time to read more about hover modifiers for CSS, like normal CSS. Anyways, more on that later on. So we have a cool effect. Let's say we want the effect to be more smoother. Okay, before we do that, let me change this. So we can replace this with something like this. And we still get the same effect. So let's say we want the transition from this color to this color to be much more smoother, more slower, more natural. Let's try, and let's add a transition class. Yeah, if you notice, you can see that the color changes in a very gentle manner. Let's say we want to make the duration longer, so we can say duration 500, for instance. And now the transition will be much more slower, as you can see. But I like the default duration, so I'm just going to ignore that. And let's apply the same thing for this other button. Let's see. Alright, so let's say, let me just duplicate this and use it. So we want indigo 200 when you hover, and slow transition. So we have that. Very cool. Okay, so in the next video, I'll be making this button, and yeah.